What, in your opinion, are the traits needed to be a leader?
Well, first of all, you got to be a little crazy. I mean, you've got to be crazy enough to. I mean, look at you. I mean, when you were a child, you couldn't have believed that you were here, but you had to believe that you could be.
You can't keep bringing this back to me.
Well, but I mean,
you've got to talk about you and what traits you perceive.
I talk about this relates to everybody, because your audience has to believe that this can relate to them as well. I'm not some special guy that came off of Mars or someplace. I'm just like every member of your audience, and they can do exactly what I have done. That's really my point.
So number one, you need to be crazy. What else?
Crazy enough to dream. Number two, you got to live with something larger and more important than yourself. Number three, you got to figure out what you have to give in a world obsessed with only one question, it seems, which is, what do I have to get? Number four, you've got to have an idea. The real value proposition is the power of your ideas, and then you got to move it forward. The best way to start living your dreams is to start by waking up. You got to move on that idea. And then I think this is most powerful. I think the success is going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. You've got to flip the definition of success from being this glamour thing with baubles and whatever, because that's not success. You got to make it that you actually sort of embrace legitimate suffering. And that's a strange thought. The key to life is managing pain.
I want to throw something else in here. Isn't one of the key elements also around ego?
Oh,
that
God,
ego is involved, and that's
yeah.
not necessarily a good thing when it comes to leadership.
It's not a good thing out of balance. I'm not a humble person, because you can't do what I do and be humble. I'm going over there, I'm going to do this, and so I have a vision, but I have humility in the way I do it. So I'll take your advice, I'll take your advice, I'll take your advice, because how I do it is not important. I want to do it right. So you have to have an ego, a healthy ego, to say I'm going to do it, but you have to have enough humility to say I'm willing to do it in the right way, I'm willing to listen, I'm willing to be open. The reason leadership is so fascinating, and you can't put it into a university model, is the science of leadership is what I tell you, but the art of leadership is what I do under intense pressure. And you know when you're a leader at that moment when you're under some intense, incredible pressure, and you've got to make a decision. And life is 10% what life does to you, and 90% how you choose to respond.
Who would you say has influenced your leadership style?
Oh, my mentors, probably Andrew Young, who was Dr. King's senior aide in the civil rights movement. I think he's just brilliant. Call him our domestic Nelson Mandela in the United States. Quincy Jones, who I think is an icon in this world. My pastor, Reverend Murray, who told me it's not what people call you, it's what you answer to that's important. And
have you had to deal with failure before?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, that's what defines me. That's why some people might say I'm fearless, which I disagree with. Because I think the courage is nothing more than your faith reaching through your fear, displaying itself as action. I think a fool is fearless. But I think
what's your biggest failure to date? I think for our audience to understand you, we need to understand where you've come from.
I was homeless when I was 18. I probably failed in, I don't know, 50 businesses between the age 10, I started my first business, and the age 20. So by the time I was 18 and was homeless, I was a veteran in success and failure. By 19, I started a financial services firm. By age 25, I had run it up to $24 million a year in business, U.S. By 25 and a half, I was being honored by the President of the United States, and then 26, the riots happened in South Central LA, and I founded Operation Hope. So while adults saw a kid, 26 years old, founding Operation Hope, I really had 16 years of business experience and a lot of experience with failure. So nothing really.
What kept you going? What was behind your energy in enabling you to turn ultimately those numerous failures into the success that you've just mapped out for us?
I think that I knew that I was God's child, and I knew that I was important and special, and I knew that I had a place in this world, and that I had deserved to succeed like anybody else. And so I had this enormous faith in myself and confidence, partly because my mother told me that she loved me, partly because I saw my dad be an entrepreneur, so I wanted to be one. Role model, so important. Which is one of the reasons I want these volunteers throughout Africa. But part of it was just my faith that I just knew that God made me great. Not that I'm a great man, but God made me special, and that I had these gifts. But I had to go back to ego. My biggest problem was me. I had to get out of my own way. That's the number one issue. Can you get comfortable in your own skin?
Do you have to believe in God to be successful?
I think you've got to believe in something larger and more important than yourself. You'll get your 15 minutes, okay? Everybody will get their 15 minutes if they try hard enough. But you'll open the paper every day and it's some schmuck who had their 15 minutes and ran it into a creek or a gutter because of ego, arrogance, greed, whatever. And so I think if you want to have 15 years, if you want to have, God willing, a century of success, then you've got to have these larger principles that we're talking about. Everybody we admire, if you think about it, practices the love leadership philosophy over a long period of time. So you know, you can make a buck.
While you're trying to create opportunity in South Africa and push the financial literacy theme, we've got a crisis that's still continuing, as you said, in the greater globe. Yes. And that is going to impact your ability, anybody's ability, to do good, ultimately, from a financial perspective. There are those who say we are going to see a double-dip recession. If you look further afield, where do you see this world going?
Well, I'm an optimist, so I think this is going to be the 30 most amazing years in modern history. When I was in Davos, an African gentleman said, look, this mainstream leader, he's like, mainstream leaders are like an orchid in a hothouse. They need perfect conditions in order to thrive. But Africans, we're like weeds. We grow anywhere. And I think that survivor mentality is what it's going to take. If you're going to survive today, it's not going to be on your reputation, on your bio, on who you know, on how smart you think you are, or really even how much money you've got. You've got to hustle. It's the magic of compounded hustle. It's about never giving up. It's about letting going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. It's having an unbridled optimism, and is looking through this crisis to see opportunity. I raised more money last year in the midst of the worst year since the Great Depression than any time in our history, because I reimagined our possibilities.
You've brought us to money. How important in the scheme of things is money to you?
Well, it reminds me, somebody said, well, money won't solve all your problems, but it's a good place to start. So, I mean, no one wants to be broke. That's not a good thing. But I think this is about balance. I mean,
are you motivated by money? Let me turn that question on its head.
No, it bores me. It bores me. I thought
Have you got too much money then?
No, I don't have too much, but I would probably give it away because here's what I find fascinating. I've got a car and a motorcycle and this and that, a nice house, but you know, my friends who've got 20 houses and 30 cars, they don't have any time to use any of that stuff. I don't have time to ride my motorcycle.
So you're not in the game for a private corporate jet down the line. That's not important to you.
No, it would help me with my 500,000 air miles a year, but that's just an efficiency issue. It's not an issue of me primping or trying to impress somebody. I think that you impress somebody with your character and with your energy. And when you have energy, I think it radiates. People have a feeling about you. When they look in your eyes, they make a character assessment. And that is not about the suit you're wearing. It's about the sight that's in your eyes. And we have to understand what kind of leader.
But hang on a minute. Yeah. If you were to walk into the White House and you were a pauper, do you think you would have made it to the level or to the status of being an advisor to the U.S. administration?
When I first walked in the White House, I was a pauper.
How did they take you seriously? What did you do that made Clinton take you seriously and said, that's the man off the street, I want to advise the U.S. administration?
I never gave up. I never gave up. I had powerful ideas, I believe. I was consistent. I remember one time, this is going back before President Clinton, this was when President Bush's father was in office. I flew to Washington, D.C. from California, and I couldn't afford it then. With a $3,000 ticket, you know, that's a lot of money, a lot of rand, almost 30,000 rand, for a 15-minute meeting with the Secretary of HUD. A 15-minute meeting, because I knew that once I got in that meeting, he wouldn't let me go after 15 minutes.
But how did you get the meeting? Because that's what people out there want to know. How do you, without influence, without money, get that initial meeting that then sets the stage for your future success? I
was a guest at the White House. This is a long, I mean, you don't have time for the story. I was a guest at the White House. The Secretary of HUD walked by. If you're in the room, they assume you're somebody. I said, can I have a meeting? He's not going to say no. He said yes, but he said 15 minutes thinking I would decline it, because he knew I was in L.A. But I'm crazy. So I flew back to L.A., flew back to Washington, D.C., did that 15-minute, and by the way, that turned into one of my largest business deals ever, and a great relationship. His name was Secretary Jack Kemp.
Right, if there's one message that you want to leave our audience with this evening, what would that be?
Hope. It's the most dangerous thing. The most dangerous person in the world is a person with no hope. And fear is a prosperity killer. So we obsess about money and clothes and wardrobes and cars and things and offices. But what's really important? Faith, compassion, tolerance, joy, integrity. Even the law, even a contract requires faith. If you don't have faith in that contract, the contract means nothing. So the intangibles we've got to make tangible. We've got to put more confidence and more creed in your reputation, in your integrity, in joy, in passion, in compassion, in love, in relationships.